50% of the Palestinian economy is completely dependent upon payments from Israel. Their economy is about $4 billion a year today. Half of that, so $2 billion a year, is money transferred from Israel into the Palestinian Authority. These payments are made up of taxes, customs, VAT, income taxes, collected in Israel and then transferred to the Palestinians. So if you're a Palestinian worker working in an Israeli-owned business, you're paying income tax in Israel. Israel takes 75% of that income tax, transfers it over to the Palestinian Authority to help them with their economic development. Unfortunately, out of the $2 billion a year transferred from Israel, so it's between 150 to 200 million a month, 10% of that is then invested by the Palestinian Authority in their pay-to-slave policy. So they make payments up to $4,000 a month to families of people who have either killed Israelis or tried to kill Israelis. Towards the end of last year, a lobby of Israeli terrorist victims complained to the Israeli government and said, we cannot continue to transfer monies from Israel into the Palestinian Authority that we know are going to be used to pay terrorists these incentive payments to carry out attacks against Israel. What the Israeli government decided to do was to freeze about 10% of these payments, so the same amount which is given every month from the Palestinian Authority to the families of terrorists, that same amount would be frozen, and Israel would basically transfer 90% of its traditional payments and say, until you stop the pay-to-slay policy, we're going to keep this money on the side, and as soon as you desist from paying terrorists, we'll transfer this money over to you. Since January 2019, Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, says either we're going to get all the money for Israel or none of the money for Israel. He actually said that these payments to what he calls quote-unquote martyrs, or the families of martyrs, or people who have been killed or imprisoned for trying to kill Israelis, these payments are more important than anything else we're doing. He said, if I have one penny left in my hand, I will give it to them rather than to the living. And so this is a very serious issue. And basically, there are many civil servants that work for Mahmoud Abbas that haven't been paid salaries in like 6 months. Those who haven't paid salaries have been paid around 50% of their actual salary. So there's a huge economic crisis right now in the Palestinian Authority, which basically expresses the fact that the Palestinian leadership today cares more about destroying Israel and destroying Israeli families and supporting terrorism than it does about the economic prosperity of their own people. This was also very evident this year because the White House put out this fantastic working paper called Peace to Prosperity, the Economic Plan, a New Vision for the Palestinian People, led by Jared Kushner. And basically this is the United States offering an economic incentive package of $50 billion to be invested into the lives of the Palestinian people in the West Bank, in Gaza, as well as in countries that have large Palestinian refugee communities, such as Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt. This money will go into projects that create jobs, that invest in civic infrastructure and invest in human resources in order to slash unemployment of Palestinians by 50%, to raise the expected lifespan and to diminish infant mortality rates by creating better medical services, etc. It's a fantastic plan. But what did Mahmoud Abbas say when he was offered, come to this conference that's taking place right now in Bahrain to talk about this exciting $50 billion in economic catalyst plan for your people? He said, no way. Thank you very much. We don't need the $50 billion. Why? Because they're not discussing political rights. They're not discussing, borders and land, etc., which he feels are much more important than the economic welfare of his people. We know from history that if you put land above people, you get a graveyard. The exciting thing, though, is that the business community is engaged in this conference. So even though the political leadership of the Palestinians did not go or is boycotting the Bahrain conference today, you have Israeli and Palestinian business leaders who are going there to engage with the American government, together with governments of Arab states throughout the Middle East, to talk about how can we improve the economic standing of the Palestinian people. I think this is a brilliant plan. And I think it's brilliant because our late Prime Minister and President Shimon Peres said this. He said, politicians create problems, business people find solutions. And so will this economic peace plan succeed? I think that entirely is dependent upon whether or not we will wait for the political will of those in power today in the Palestinian Authority, or whether the business communities in the Palestinian and Israeli territories, together with the surrounding companies, will say, you know what, We're not going to wait for the politicians to make decisions and to sign on a peace plan. We're going to proceed today to create economic prosperity, economic development, get the Palestinians out of poverty in the Palestinian Authority and throughout the Arab states in the Middle East. And once people have food on their table and once people have jobs, then all the other things become much less important. I think the emphasis needs to be on improving the life and quality of people, much more important than the discussion regarding land. Who has right to what land, where our borders are, and so on and so forth. So our motto in Arise is make jobs, not war. That seems to be what Jared Kushner is trying to do here. We support this wholeheartedly. I would say as a prayer point, for those of you who want to pray about Israel, please pray that this stubborn insistence of Mahmoud Abbas not to receive money from the Israeli government, not to receive, the $50 billion package from the United States government, that this won't trigger another uprising. We want to pray that we're not going to see another intifada, that, the voice of the people on the ground will be, maybe we should reconsider and think about, receiving this investment, this massive investment, $50 billion over the next 10 years in our infrastructure. That would be a phenomenal result. So thank you for praying for the peace of Jerusalem, praying for Israel. Keep tracking with us.